So one big example is like the material realities of AI seem to be so much worse than expected. And they're certainly far, far worse than the companies developing them are suggesting. And by this, I mean that the systems that we're developing and how we're using them have significant effects on planetary boundaries, like the Earth systems that make life possible. And like much of what we're doing as a species, like we're just materially unsustainable, you know. So that's one. There's also very sloppy language, very sloppy language. I know we talked about that briefly before, but very sloppy language. AI means a million different things. And it's like the definition keeps getting broader and broader and broader and broader. And AI has an interesting history, quite a mythological history, well prior to the 57 work kicking off in Dartmouth. So a lot of people have forgotten that or haven't actually studied it, which is interesting because a huge amount of people are working in AI at the moment, probably without much understanding of its historicity, as in like its historical accuracy. We also have big claims being made about like the capacity an algorithm has for subjectivity or sentience or consciousness or thinking, feeling, affect, etc., etc. And a lot of this rhetoric is also very sloppy and not grounded in the philosophy of mind, which is very extensive literature, and the related sciences, the psychological sciences, recognizing that's very broad, neuroscience, cognitive sciences, etc. But I think the biggest blind spot is the fact that we are doing all of this because we can. We're not doing it because we should. And by that, I mean, we're not doing it because it's like the good and right thing based on what we believe truly matters. Never has there been some deep, integrous, and highly participatory approach to asking, hey, should we build these systems? If so, how should we build them? For what purposes? What are valid purposes? What overall checks and balances need to be in place? Like, who gets a say into how they might evolve? And now, don't get me wrong, EU AI Act, and there's lots of different things happening, right? Smart, talented, caring people trying. But relative to the pace at which this is moving within the quote unquote free market, a bit sarcastic about that deliberately, there's a massive gap there. And I think just, I'll build upon that, that little subtle dig, or maybe not so subtle dig. One of the ways of looking at this is through the sort of engine, I use that deliberately, a mechanistic sort of analogy or metaphor, of modern capitalism, which largely exists to accumulate more capital. And AI is really just servicing the needs of the capital owners in many ways. Like, that's what it's doing. Now, I'm not the first to suggest this as a critique, and you might go, oh gosh, that sounds very Marxist. I don't necessarily think that's bad in a binary sense. There were plenty of important, useful, thoughtful contributions in that body of work. It's also not that simple. We're very in this kind of like, we love extremes, we love binaries, etc. If you're not a hardcore capitalist, then you're a goddamn commie. It's like, well, you think there are only two ways to socially organize a complex global civilization? Like, that is so intellectually, relationally sloppy. It's ridiculous. But I think the bigger problem, and AI is just like part of this, like a property of this, the bigger problem is that our system of capital accumulation is life eroding. And one simple way to qualify that is the very tight relation between GDP, gross domestic product, and environmental degradation. I think there's somewhere between 99 and 100% correlated. And we've been trying to do what's called sustainable growth theory, or green growth, for a number of decades now, and it's just not working. We're not seeing what would formally be referred to as sufficient absolute decoupling. Now, I'm not suggesting here, there's a bunch of technical terms in there, don't worry about them too much for now. I'm not suggesting that there's necessarily some like evil conspiracy per se. That's not the suggestion, but it does mean that we can't continue on this current trajectory if we want a decent future. And by decent, like, I mean literally a world where people's material needs are met within what is referred to as the safe operating zone of planetary boundaries. And for folks that aren't familiar with that, please look that up. It's one of the most important reference points for any human alive right now. The safe operating zone is not a political target. It's a biophysical constraint. It doesn't care whether you're left, right, up, down, in, out. Like, it doesn't, none of that matters. It's a biophysical constraint. And we've currently transgressed 6 of 9 planetary boundaries. And so I think coming back to it, so there's all these blind spots, Anna, but like, if AI is really to deliver significant benefits to humanity and world at large, to contribute to what truly matters, it probably needs to be developed and used within a totally different socioeconomic paradigm.